The Mental Health Show with Mark Aiston.
Hey Sasha, welcome.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me.
How's your well-being at the moment?
It's actually pretty good. I mean, I live in Sydney. I'm not in Victoria, fortunately. I'm near the beach, so I've created it this way. So it's luckily it's good.
That's a wonderful thing. Yeah. What just in a general sense, what do you think the mood is like in Sydney at the moment? I mean, you know, obviously that's a difficult question to answer because you're not talking to everyone. But in a general sense, is it one of anxiety? Are people perhaps becoming a little more relaxed now? What are your thoughts?
I think what's been happening over the last few months has created an overwhelming sense of anxiety, and it's not necessarily an overt sense of, anxiety that we had straight away, during the toilet paper crisis and when things were completely uncertain. But I think it's just the dialogue that has been consistent, in the media, in the business landscape. All the sort of uncertainty combined with the doom and gloom has sort of created an underlying sense of unease. Even if people are not feeling it on the surface, there's this sort of angst everywhere. Obviously, different pockets are hit differently. Sydney, has a wide demographic. I would say, closer to the beach with a younger demographic, people a little bit more immune because they're listening to different channels, different things. They have different motives, but I would definitely say sort of in the business landscape and, your day-to-day workforce, I would say that there's and too much anxiety.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm certainly, although we here in Adelaide are very lucky that we haven't had too many infections, the anxiety levels here are still pretty high, and I can imagine in Victoria. Clearly in Victoria. So let's that's the perfect opportunity now for us to talk about what you do, which is you're a mindset coach, and I'm interested in what that is. How do you describe to someone what you do when they see you out and about?
Yeah, so I'm a mindset and stress transformation coach. Why I use the word transformation instead of stress management coach is because stress energy actually doesn't disappear. It needs to be transformed. So what we're actually experiencing now around Australia, in more so probably in Victoria now than Adelaide or Sydney, but it's still really prevalent. This level of anxiety, it hasn't come from nowhere and it can't just disappear. A lot what people have been experiencing for a long time is just being pushed out of them. So, in essence, I think Dr. Wayne Dwyer, he's quite well known for his personal development work. A really amazing analogy that he uses is, if you have apples and you have oranges and you squeeze them as hard as you can, the only thing you're going to get out of the apple is apple juice, and the only thing you're going to get out of the orange is orange juice. So that's sort of what's happening now with people. Whatever has been sitting dormant in them during steady times, during normality, is all coming out, and it's sort of being pushed out to an extreme. And that's sort of what I do with my clients in a sense. People can go on along for many years living their life just fine until one day they have a nervous breakdown or there's an event that causes them, such as, what's happening now, that causes them to experience a huge amount of stress, breakdown, health issues. So what I do with my clients is I work on what's happening in their mindsets. If they were to be put pressure on like an orange or an apple, what would come out of them? So, the best method is preventative. So I love clients that come to me to do better in their lives, to understand themselves. But unfortunately, a lot of people come to me when there is a crisis, divorce, scenarios like this, uncertainty, and that's where we go backwards and see what's been happening within their mindset and, to create a shift, to create some self-awareness and to reorganize their mindset for a vision of the future rather than recreating fears of the past or, sort of being thrown around energetically, mentally by what's going on around them, by the media, by their family, their friends, their circumstances, and creating a sense of personal power so that they can go forward with more certainty and, a more positive mindset.
Yeah, it has to come from within. And one thing that I've learned in recent times is that we are totally responsible for how we react to situations, no matter what they are, no matter what those situations are. We are responsible for that, and we can blame a lot of things that are happening on the outside, in the outside world, or on the outside world. But the bottom line is we are still in control, theoretically, of how we react to that. I was interested, you mentioned that you have people who come to you who are at high levels of stress, but you also have some people who come to you who simply want to continue to be nice and relaxed and continue to want to live their life as best as they possibly can. When those two people come into into your rooms, do you notice straight away which is which?
Yes, I would say that actually I work with a very similar demographic. So I work with a lot of male executives and business owners, and the ones that come to me early are sort of a little bit younger. They might be around 30. They're a few and far between, but the majority come sort of in their late 30s to mid 50s, and it's usually once they've had a divorce or, some a business breakdown or something's happened in their life and they don't know exactly what it is. So straight away I can tell the difference, but they're a very similar type of person. So the one that comes to me later was that person who, was a high achiever, is a high achiever and just was on that race to achieve more, do more, prove more. But what happens, after a certain time, that go-getting, it doesn't provide the same sense of satisfaction. Actually, it provides more and more emptiness because there's no pause, there's no real awareness of what they're doing, why they're doing. So everything else in their life becomes sort of a little bit messy, and it's sort of only a matter of time until there is this internal conflict. But yeah, I do notice the difference, and it's usually to do with the age, I would say.
Is that right? Yeah. Actually, just on that, is there a demographic that is in that particularly these days are more stressful than others, or is it across the board?
I would say I work with people who are usually the ones who don't show a lot of emotional stress. I know that there is a lot of stress and anxiety out there. But I work with people who their role is to be the leader. They own the business. They are the ones who make decisions. They are the ones who, are the rock in the family. So it's almost like they haven't expressed their emotions for so long. That's why when something quite big happens, they don't know where to go. They don't have the tools. They don't have the skills. Whereas, I have worked with a lot of women in the past, more so, in groups, in workshops. And I guess that demographic of people, I wouldn't even say women, but people who are more used to expressing their emotions, they're able to allow that energy to flow out, that stress energy to flow out, which may seem really erratic and turbulent at times, but it allows the energy to flow out, which I mentioned before. Stress energy has to go somewhere. You can't just manage stress. You need to overcome it. So it's like people who have gone ahead in life and just pushed through. It's when something very stressful happens, what happens is the stress energy goes inwards rather than outwards, which is actually more dangerous because that's, after a long time, we all know that stress can cause physical illness, it does very commonly. Heart attack, it's very common for perfectly healthy men who, have been very active mentally, physically all their lives to have a heart attack. And it's because of this sort of suppressed stress energy, these emotions that have been suppressed over time. And in times of tension, that's when people, they say that people show their true colors in challenging situations or tension. It's not the true colors, it's just the things that have been suppressed over time sort of erupt in times of tension. That's when people have their outbursts, their anger, their breakdowns, they act out of character. And unfortunately, we aren't taught at school how to deal with our emotions. We don't have tools and strategies for our mindset. We're very focused on the external world. And that's what I teach people to do. I give them mindset tools and strategies so they can orientate themselves, so that when the world says jump, they stop and pause instead of jump off that cliff.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you find that people who tend to say yes a lot become more stressful in the end?
What happens with there are different types of personality, and there's something called the Enneagram, which some people may have looked into through reading or psychology. I use it in quite a different way. So that personality type, the yes personality, is sort of called, it's a people pleaser or the helper in the Enneagram. So this personality, when they say yes a lot, they're doing it because they're not meeting their own needs. They're helping other people so that they can get what they want. This is not conscious, it's unconscious. So it's not that they're a bad person. Everybody loves them. They have a lot of friends because they're always helping everyone. But what happens is this people pleaser personality, this helper, if they do not get what they want, and often they don't because they don't communicate that, they just help others to essentially get what they want. When they don't get it over a prolonged period of time, they turn to another personality type, which is a lot more aggressive. So that's when a lot of anger comes out. And in the Enneagram, that's the 8, or power and control. So that's sort of suppressed people pleaser, not saying what they need, not communicating directly what they want over a certain period of time, that will turn into resentment and anger. And often that becomes illness, that becomes cancer, cancer, because I also work with how emotions turn to physical ailments, which, if you have a quick Google of quantum physics and a lot of new science out there, there is plenty of science to prove it. We wouldn't have learned that in science class at school, but it's all out there now. And emotional energy turns into physical energy if it's not addressed, and very quickly. So with things like cancer, if you are suppressing anger, resentment, all these emotions, that can become cancerous. And, I always tell people, people are powerful. We create things, and we can create the healing. We can create the healing in our bodies, in our relationships, in our mental well-being. We are, as you said earlier, responsible for everything, and we have this power.
Yeah, we are. And I think what a lot of people tend to do, and perhaps particularly at the moment with things so stressful, is when people are getting upset or annoyed, or they're losing their temper, or perhaps they're just slightly on edge, they tend to, I guess, in a way, take that out on other people, of course, but in some ways, and then of course they get depressed, and it becomes a bit of a snowball. So, I'm feeling depressed. This is going to last forever. Woe is me. And I understand that when you're in that state, most people probably do default to to that language. And I know it's really difficult, but I think the language that we use, and I guess that's the point I'm getting to, and I'd be interested in your response to this, but the language that we use about ourselves is not so important, it's critical. Do you agree?
Yeah. Yeah, you have such a strong point there, because what I notice with people and with my clients is their self-talk is evident in their language. You'll notice people who use the word trust a lot. You can't trust. That's all conditioning. Like I myself am from a Soviet background, so I grew up in Ukraine, and they had a regime there and years of oppression. So it's very, very common for, even for myself to catch myself to, my parents always use the word trust, because in Soviet Russia, you couldn't trust anybody. And that's extremely common. And it's actually, maybe it served them once, maybe it served my parents growing up, but it no longer serves us in Australia now. So this type of language is a really actually great way to catch yourself. But also if you keep using this language, it limits you from what's happening in the present. It's sort of an old story that no longer serves you, 100%. That kept you safe once, 100%. And usually this happens with people, the formation years are about 0 to 7. So we create these beliefs and, things that maybe served you as a child, like you can't trust strangers. Yes, as a child that serves you. But if you take that into adulthood, you'll become a very lonely person. It's very important to watch your language and your words, because that will give you clues of what's going on in your mindset, in your conscious mind, but also in your subconscious mind. And just asking yourself the question, maybe this one served me, but is this serving me now? Is this perspective of I can't trust strangers, or, you can't trust people, is this serving me now, or is it limiting me?
That's a really good point. And just to go back on a point we were discussing a while back, I know maybe it was with someone else I was talking to. That's what happens when you turn 62. You start to forget about who you've spoken to and when you've spoken to someone. I was talking to someone earlier today, and what happens is you can be in a conversation with them, and you can be talking to them. And they'll ask you, how are you going? You'll say fine, or whatever it might be. And you can, and then maybe you'll get into a bit more of a deep discussion, and they'll say, how are you really? And by the end of the discussion, Sasha, you've convinced yourself that you're really not all that great. And that's fine. That's one area, and we've sort of partly covered that. But the interesting thing is, and being in this field, you would understand what I'm about to say, the person still gets something out of it, even when they're being negative toward themselves. I'm not sure what it is, but they're still getting something out of it. I don't know whether it's shooting off endorphins or serotonin or whatever it is, but they're getting something out of being negative about where they're at in their life. Does that make sense?
It definitely makes sense. And I mean, you obviously you work in media. I also have a background in media, and that narrative sells, it sells, and it sells because people are more attracted to the negative. It's like we are in our default mode. We are addicted to the negative. There's a long explanation for this, but in short, so it's quite interesting. In our stage of human evolution, we've got lots of technology. We no longer need to go out and hunt. But back in the hunter-gatherer days, our brain was in this mode where it had to look out for danger. Our lives were constantly at threat. We needed to have this negativity. Negativity is not a bad thing. It's a tool. We have a lot of tools. That negativity was useful before because we had to keep ourselves safe. In the modern world, which, the listeners are currently in, where we're all in, we don't have physical threats to our life, but our brain is still in that default mode because we haven't paid attention to it. Our brain is this amazing piece of software where we have no idea how to use it. So it's in default mode. It gets a kick out of anything negative because it's going to that, that side of the brain which is always looking for danger. And also, depending, you were talking about age before, but, the older you get, the more stuck you do get in your story.
100%.
That story, it's what we call the ego. It's the ego or our identity. That's where we're safe. And even when we don't like it, it feels good. And that's why people are so afraid of change. And, what's happening in our world now, it may not be good or bad. It's just a big change. And
people get scared of that.
very scared because the human ego does not like change. It would rather die than, not know what's going on. That's the human ego. So that's the importance of understanding your mindset, what's going on, because when you're faced with the choice of changing or dying, we want to choose change. We want to, and, that's a figurative type of speech, but also it's literal these days because our rates of suicide are so high. And with suicide and depression, it is a serious topic, but you would be surprised that because of the lack of education and understanding around it, it's not necessarily because something dire is going on that people make this choice. It's just because they do not understand their emotions, their mindset. And it's as simple as almost understanding this story and reframing it. So that's why it's so important to understand yourself.
And I can understand that. And it's a matter of having the tools to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And look, some of those tools might be physical tools. It might be that you as I do, I swim every day now, or I go to the gym every day, or it might be for some others that they take medication, or they do some sort of mindfulness training, or they do some hypnosis, or they do some meditation. But I do believe that there are other ways around it, and it's how you perceive the way you are. I know that's simplistic right at the end of all that, but I do.
It's 100%. It's self-awareness, and it's nobody's fault. We have not been taught these, unless you're very fortunate, very lucky. We have not. Most people haven't been taught these skills from their parents because they didn't know them. We don't get taught that at school. We do not get taught how to operate the most advanced computer, being our minds. It's like 2-year-olds are actually pretty good with computers these days, but it's like giving a 2-year-old the keys to a car and just saying, go for it. That's what's happening right now. So we need to learn how to drive. We need to learn how to be in the driver's seat of our minds.
Relearn how to drive. Yeah, absolutely. So, Sasha, a couple of quick questions, but so why are you passionate about this? Is there any particular reason? Is it something that happened in your life, or is it part of your background? When you were living overseas, or what is the reason?
So I've always been very, very interested in personal development, even when I didn't know what it was. When I was 14 years old, I picked up a book by Louise Hay, the author of Heal Your Life. She's quite famous. It's all about what you're saying. Words, have meaning. They can change your life. And, being very naive and not knowing what I was reading, I just put it into practice. And my life changed very quickly from physical ailments that I was going through to my dynamics with my family, with my friends. It changed very quickly. And I've sort of, forgot about that for a while. But later in my career, when I was having a chat to you before, my background is in television, and, television in Australia is quite challenging. But when I was going for big goals, when I had these big dreams in my 20s, I needed to put to practice some mindset tools, So I did all the reading, Anthony Robbins, spiritual texts, everything that's out there. And it got me to a certain level. It got me to create something, quite big out of nothing. But it left me feeling quite empty, and sort of like I had the vision board of my life, but it was, it was really feeling very empty for some reason. And I just thought I put everything into practice. Why? At the time, I didn't have the words for it, and that's how interesting this space is. But I would say that I was quite unhappy, but I had nothing to complain about. And, in Australia, we are the lucky country. So a lot of people do experience this. They have everything. We have met our our lower needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, our safety and security, the lower chakras. So we have all of those things, but we don't know what's next. And that's where I was. So in short, I went on an overseas journey. The teachers came, I had the questions, and, I had a lot of mentors. And I really understood what I had created in my life and the missing link. So, I had really learnt all of these tools and experienced them in my life. And I just noticed the turnaround effect from physical ailments I was having to the relationships to my work. Everything had changed and everything felt right, and that's really what I want to share with people, because we don't have this. Not everyone can right now, especially go on a journey and find mentors, and, we don't have that. So I want to give people kind of the quick fix, people who don't have time, who have families, who have businesses, very quick tools and strategies that work, that can shift things for them very, very quickly.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Sasha, how do people get in contact with you?
The best way to actually contact me directly is through LinkedIn. So if they just type in Sasha Fedorovsky Mindset Coach, maybe I can put a link up later, they can just shoot me a message directly. I also share a lot of video content on Instagram, a lot of articles as well. So my Instagram handle is _mindset_daily. So there's a lot of videos and content there if you're just starting in the mindset space. And feel free just to send me a message, reach out if you have questions. I love talking to people about it and, helping them as much as I can.
Well, you're very, very passionate, and I've really enjoyed this. And, I think so many people are looking for something. They might not know what it is, but they're looking for something, and I think you can provide them with that. Just to be clear, Fedorovsky.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, good work. It's a long one.
Yeah. Well, I only spelled it. I didn't say it. No, Fedorovsky.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, Sasha, thank you so much. That was just brilliant. Really appreciate it. And I know, even though it was just a brief chat, but I know that people watching this will get a lot out of it. So I thank you for that.
Thank you so much for having me.